The press release said the word retained. 350 employees retained. The brand retained. The mission retained. The announcement came on October 27, 2017, and it used the language of preservation. A company based in Olathe, Kansas, had just acquired a beloved Italian chartmaker founded in a Tuscan port city in 1984. Garmin Limited, listed on Nasdaq under the ticker GRMN, had purchased Navionics. The press release wanted sailors to feel that nothing had changed. 5 months earlier, on May 11, 2017, a nearly identical press release had appeared. A community database built by 2 liveaboard sailors in Castine, Maine, had been acquired by the same corporation. That announcement also said the founders would be retained. The mission of the platform, free, community-built, open to every boater on every device, would continue. Garmin's own CEO said the database had no equal anywhere in the marine world. What neither press release mentioned was the subscription architecture that would follow. 2 platforms, 169 days apart, both built by sailors on the same model, community data, 0 subscription fees at launch. One now costs $49.99 per year. The other costs $249.99 per year on a dedicated Helm SD card. Together, inside a single subscription ecosystem, they cost a sailor $499.95 over 5 years for data that sailors themselves generated, on passages they paid for, on boats they own. This video is not about the Navionics price increase. That case has already been made on this channel. This video is about what happened first. The platform, 250,000 sailors built, review by review and anchorage by anchorage, across more than a decade, and handed to a publicly traded corporation for an undisclosed sum. If you have not already subscribed to Yachts and Boats, that question is the reason to. This channel does not tell you what to buy, it tells you what was taken. Subscribe now and stay with us. ActiveCaptain was founded in 2006 by Karen and Jeffrey Siegel. They were not software executives building a product for a market. The Siegels were cruisers, and before that, they had founded and sold a medical technology company called MedVision, a cardiac monitoring device for personal digital assistants and mobile phones, and used the proceeds to go sailing. They sailed between Maine and the Bahamas. They sailed through the Great Lakes on the Great Loop. They went up and down the intracoastal waterway for years, aboard a 48-foot De-Fever pilot house trawler called Acapella. They built ActiveCaptain because no tool existed that did what they needed on the water. The database they created was not a list of marinas. It tracked more than 100 data points per marina entry: water depth at the fuel dock, shore power amperage, laundry availability, the condition of the approach channel as of last week, whether the anchorage 2 miles south held well in a northeast blow, and the state of the inlet since the last government survey. None of this came from a paid research team. It came from the sailors who had been there, who opened the application on their phones or laptops and typed what they knew. Jeffrey Siegel stated the founding philosophy plainly in a 2016 podcast interview. The boater, he said, would never be charged any money. The platform ran no banner ads. Revenue came from marina sponsorships, businesses paying for a listing, not sailors paying for access. The model was deliberate. Marina operators paid because they wanted accurate listings and positive reviews. Sailors contributed because the intelligence they received from other contributors was worth more than any payment Siegel could have extracted. The community fed itself. No subscription necessary, none planned. That model worked because the sailors contributing were not abstract users. They were specific people who had run specific passages and knew specific things that did not appear on any government chart and never would. The pilot who had grounded in the North Channel of a particular inlet in 2009 contributed that datum. The sailor who had anchored off a particular barrier island in a thunderstorm and dragged contributed that datum too. A decade of those contributions, stacked and verified, produced something that no commercial entity could have assembled at any price. Consider what that database represented by scale alone. A single Marina entry on ActiveCaptain contained not just the dock fees and the fuel price. It contained the approach bearing from the seabuoy, the controlling depth at mean low water as measured by a sailor who had just run it, the name of the channel to call on VHF, and the specific note about the submerged piling on the starboard side of the slip that the harbormaster had not yet marked. That information existed nowhere else on Earth. The government chart did not have it. The cruising guide published 3 years ago did not have it. The sailor who contributed it did so because the sailor who had contributed a similar note 6 months ago had saved his keel. The database had no monetary value to the people who built it. It had safety value, planning value, and the specific practical value of knowing before you arrived what would take you by surprise if you did not. That was the asset Garmin acquired. Panbo, the Marine Electronics Journal, published a review of ActiveCaptain in 2007 and described it as an innovative crowdsourced alternative to the outdated point-of-interest information available on commercial charts. That description became the standard. By 2010, other marine electronics manufacturers were licensing the ActiveCaptain data directly. By 2013, the platform had released companion applications for Windows, Mac, Android, and iOS. By 2017, 30 commercial marine electronics products had integrated the data. 250,000 registered contributors had built the database. The platform covered the continental United States and had begun expanding into the Caribbean. Sailors contributed sonar data from their depth sounders. They contributed hazard reports from their passages, fuel price updates from marina fuel docks, bridge opening schedules, tidal current notes, and photographs of approach channels taken from the helm while entering harbors. Every one of those contributions was made while those sailors were simply navigating, doing what sailors do, on boats they owned, on passages they chose. The database that resulted from that behavior belonged to Active Corporation, until it belonged to Garmin. ActiveCaptain had become the default intelligence layer for American coastal cruising. Ben Ellison, the founding editor of Panbo, noted in May 2018 that his January 2007 review of a Camden, Maine public landing was among the very first entries ever posted to ActiveCaptain. By the time Garmin acquired the platform, that single entry was one of more than 176,000 independent reviews covering marinas, anchorages, hazards, boat ramps, bridges, dams, and waterfront services accumulated by thousands of contributors over a decade. For a sailor running the intracoastal waterway from Norfolk to Florida, that database was not a convenience. It was operational intelligence. The government charts showed the magenta recommended route. The ActiveCaptain database showed where that route had shoaled since the last dredge. This was a place where the charted depth no longer matched the actual depth, and where the sailor ahead of you had touched bottom 6 weeks earlier and flagged it. That difference between the chart and the current reality was exactly what 250,000 contributors had spent a decade documenting. It had no price until Garmin assigned one. On May 11, 2017, Garmin acquired that database for an undisclosed sum. Garmin CEO Cliff Pemble said at the acquisition that there is really nothing else out there that compares to the depth and breadth of the ActiveCaptain database. Mariners rely on ActiveCaptain to make their voyages better informed and more enjoyable. He was correct, and the financial terms were not released. Jeffrey Siegel became an employee of Garmin International and led the transition for 1 year. Karen Siegel became an ActiveCaptain ambassador at Garmin. The platform kept running. The database kept accepting new reviews. The sailors who used it kept contributing. The word "free" stayed on the label through the integration period, long enough for the platform to embed itself as essential infrastructure, long enough for Garmin's acquisition of Navionics to close 169 days later, long enough for the alternatives to begin disappearing. During that first year, Garmin rebranded the original crowdsourced data system as the ActiveCaptain Community. It introduced a new application named ActiveCaptain that was designed primarily for owners of Garmin chart plotters. Users who already had the platform on their devices received update prompts to the new application. The names were similar enough that existing users assumed continuity. The architecture had changed completely. The original ActiveCaptain was a community resource accessible from any device. The new ActiveCaptain was a hardware companion app. Garmin pulled its own Blue Chart mobile application, the companion charting product that had integrated ActiveCaptain data for years and served as the default chart platform for many cruisers, from the App Store in fall 2017. The discontinuation came before the announced replacement was ready or functionally equivalent. Sailors who had purchased charts in Blue Chart Mobile could not transfer those purchases. The new ActiveCaptain application required a compatible Garmin chart plotter to unlock its core functionality. A sailor without Garmin hardware had one option instead: the Navionics boating application, which Garmin had acquired 169 days after ActiveCaptain. On May 23, 2018, 1 year to the month after the ActiveCaptain acquisition, Garmin shut down the original data feed entirely. Every third-party application that had integrated ActiveCaptain data lost its live connection overnight. Polar Navy announced publicly that it would not rebuild for the new API and that its applications would stop displaying ActiveCaptain data updated after that date. CIQ had not decided. Multiple developers declined to rebuild. Rosepoint Navigation's Coastal Explorer, which had been a primary display platform for ActiveCaptain data, completed the rebuild before the cutover and maintained access, but only after significant development work at Rosepoint's expense, not Garmin's. Garmin's stated justification for the API change was compliance with the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation, which required privacy control updates in the data feed. Garmin representatives told Panbo at the time that ActiveCaptain would remain free for users and developers. What followed was a system in which full functionality required a compatible Garmin chart plotter. Chart subscriptions ran through the ActiveCaptain application and delivered to Garmin multifunction displays, and accessing the community marina data outside the Garmin ecosystem required third-party developers to maintain integrations against Garmin's proprietary API, which several chose not to do. The sailors who had relied on those third-party integrations, CIQ on an iPad, Polar Navy on a laptop nav station, and any charting software that was not either Garmin hardware or a rebuilt API partner, arrived at the 2018 season with applications that no longer received updated ActiveCaptain data. The marina reviews they had counted on were frozen at May 22nd. New hazard reports from the community stopped appearing. The fuel price updates stopped. The sailors who had contributed those updates were still contributing them. The sailors who had relied on them simply stopped receiving them, and most did not know why. The forums documented the confusion in real time. Thread after thread in 2018 described sailors arriving at inlets. They had run dozens of times, expecting the hazard flags they had seen on previous passages to appear on their charting applications and finding nothing. The application still displayed. The community data layer had simply gone dark. Sailors who asked support forums why their apps no longer showed ActiveCaptain data received the same explanation. The API had changed, third-party applications had not rebuilt their integrations, and Garmin had not warned anyone. Robert Shearer, the experienced intracoastal waterway cruiser who published detailed waterway tracks under the username Bob423 and had been a prominent voice in the ActiveCaptain community before the Garmin acquisition, now publishes his data through Waterway Guide and his own website. Multiple independent marine publications have described the years following the Garmin acquisition as the period of ActiveCaptain's decline as a community resource. This is the moment the acquisition becomes legible. Garmin did not purchase ActiveCaptain to make it better. The acquisition was the lock-in infrastructure for coastal cruising the database sailors had made essential, and Garmin installed the lock. Subscribe to Yachts and Boats. If this channel is doing work you haven't found anywhere else. The mechanism we just described runs on a second platform. The price increase is further than you think. The pattern is identical to what followed at Navionics. In October 2017, a Navionics subscription for the United States and Canada cost $14.99 per year. That price held through the integration period, long enough for sailors to migrate their waypoint libraries, retire their paper backups, and build navigation workflows on infrastructure they no longer controlled. The first increase came between 2021 and 2022, when Garmin consolidated the regional subscription and raised the price to $24.99. On October 25, 2023, Garmin raised the price again, from $24.99 to $49.99 in a single announcement, a 100% increase in one step. From $14.99 to $49.99 is a 233% increase over 5 years. The chart data did not improve by 233%. Garmin's leverage over a user base that had decommissioned its alternatives did. The sailor who wants Navionics on a dedicated helm display rather than a phone pays $249.99 per year for the Garmin Navionics Vision Plus SD card. Worldwide coverage runs $99.99 per year. Renewed annually over 5 years, the worldwide subscription costs $499.95. The sailor who paid it owns nothing at the end. And during those 5 years, the database that justified the subscription was being improved by the subscribers themselves. Navionics processed 12 million sonar log updates from subscriber vessels in 2025 alone. Depth-sounding data was uploaded by the sailors who were simultaneously paying for access to the database their passages improved. 2 acquisitions, 169 days apart. The Marina Intelligence layer in May, the chart layer in October, both community-built, both free at the time of purchase, and both now absorbed into the same subscription architecture. Garmin's marine segment revenue was $331.95 million in 2016, before either acquisition. By 2025, it had reached $916.9 million. That was a 176% increase in 9 years. The segment also absorbed Vesper Marine for AIS and vessel monitoring in 2022, Fusion Electronics for marine audio in 2014, and JL Audio in 2023. Garmin now controls charts, marina data, vessel monitoring, and audio from a single Nasdaq-listed entity incorporated in Schaffhausen, Switzerland. The sailor who buys a Garmin chart plotter today does not buy a device. He buys into a dependency architecture. The chart plotter requires ActiveCaptain for software updates. ActiveCaptain requires a Garmin account, and that account links to the Navionics subscription. The Navionics subscription must be renewed annually to maintain auto-routing, depth contour adjustment, sonar chart overlay, and synchronization between the phone application and the MFD. When the subscription lapses, those features lock. Not at renewal, but immediately, including on charts already downloaded to the device. In January 2025, a sailor documented in the Trawler forum that after his Caribbean subscription expired, the application prevented him from deleting charts from his own tablet. To remove files from hardware he owned, he repurchased the expired subscription. The sole purpose of that transaction was temporary permission to manage his own property. The exit from that architecture is not theoretical. It already exists. It is being used. Waterway Guide is the most direct replacement for the ActiveCaptain community database. It is an independent cruising guide and marina database that has grown significantly since the Garmin acquisition. Annual membership pricing is available, and it is not tied to a chart plotter manufacturer. The marina reviews, hazard reports, bridge schedules, and anchorage notes are contributed by the same population of cruisers who built ActiveCaptain, except the data does not belong to Garmin. Noonsight is the international equivalent, a free, community-maintained cruising guide covering ports, customs procedures, and local knowledge worldwide. The platform is independent, the data is contributed by sailors, and there is no parent company with a subscription line. Sailors who post to Noonsight do not find their data resold at $249.99 per year. For European and Mediterranean marinas specifically, Navily provides community ratings and reviews on an independent platform. It is free to use, and it is not owned by any chart plotter manufacturer. The marina intelligence in the Eastern Atlantic and Mediterranean that ActiveCaptain never fully covered is well served here. The chart infrastructure outside the Garmin ecosystem was covered in full in the preceding Navionics video. OpenCPN draws on NOAA electronic navigational charts at zero annual cost, the identical S57 vector standard required aboard commercial vessels operating under SOLAS regulations on international routes, distributed by the federal government since before Garmin acquired either community platform. The latest stable release, version 5.14.0, shipped September 2025. $0 to download, install, or use permanently. OCharts distributes official data from national hydrographic authorities worldwide at approximately $20 per region, one payment, no expiry date. An OCharts package purchased in 2026 functions without renewal in 2033. OpenPlotter installs on a Raspberry Pi single-board computer costing between $35 and $80, draws 10 watts from the vessel's 12-volt system, and produces a purpose-built helm navigation display drawing on official government charts with no vendor dependency of any kind. The Garmin GPS Map. 722XS at West Marine in Fort Lauderdale retails for $699 before the annual subscription is added. Total hardware cost for a purpose-built chart plotter displaying official government charts at the helm is under $100. The math is not subtle. For the sailor who wants marina intelligence that functions the way ActiveCaptain functioned before the acquisition, the practical workflow is direct. Use Waterway Guide for marinas and intracoastal waterway hazards. Before departure, Noonsight for international port entry procedures, and Navily for European marina berth reviews. Those three sources cover what ActiveCaptain covered, with the distinction that none is owned by the company that manufactures your chart plotter. The data you contribute to those platforms does not improve a subscription that you then pay to access. The reviews you post to Waterway Guide do not become a proprietary asset that Garmin monetizes. That distinction is not incidental. It is the reason to use them. These tools existed before Garmin's 2017 acquisitions. They continue to develop without commercial pressure to raise subscription prices. The sailors who use them contributed no data to Garmin's proprietary database and owe Garmin no annual fee to retrieve what they built. The pattern that produced the $499 subscription will not stop with Navionics and ActiveCaptain. Every free community platform that has accumulated enough sailor-contributed data to be worth acquiring is, by the logic of this acquisition sequence, a candidate. Waterway Guide, Noonsight. Any platform where sailors contribute intelligence and a corporation could extract value by acquiring the asset, locking the alternatives, and installing a subscription. The sailor who recognizes the mechanism is the sailor who does not spend the next decade building the database Garmin charges them to access in 2035. The ledger does not lie. 2 community platforms. 1 corporation. 169 days between them. $499 over 5 years for data you generated. The only monopoly they can enforce is the one you accept. Subscribe to Yachts and Boats. The next video follows the money further.